Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Greetings, listeners. You're listening to Movie Oubliette, the hemisphere hopping podcast with me, Dan, out of lockdown and enjoying socializing again in Melbourne, Australia.
And me, Conrad, enjoying 5G via my second vaccine dose in Cambridge, UK.
In this podcast, we pore over the wonders of genre films, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, because nothing gets the blood pumping more than lethal microbes, rapidly counting down self-destruct sequences, and of course, lasers.
Of course.
Conrad, how are you today?
I'm very well, yes, and quite excited to be fully vaccinated now. And I didn't even have any side effects from the second dose, actually.
Yeah, I heard with AZ, first dose, the worst, second dose, nothing. The reverse for Pfizer, I heard. Second dose is the worst, yeah.
Really? Ah, interesting. So no sign of vaccines in your neck of the woods, though?
Not for my age group yet.
No.
So I guess it's good to be young.
Well, you're a safe bet, I guess. You're less likely to be hospitalized, I suppose. But also you're out of lockdown, which is good news.
Yeah, I mean, it was a snap lockdown, 2 weeks. We got over it, almost back to normal.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, we're pretty much back to normal here, and they're just trying to decide whether or not we can completely let go of all of the restrictions and start night clubbing and take the masks off, and I think the general consensus is probably not. So
Sure.
So we shall see. But at least we can go to the cinema now and have a bit more fun.
Yes, yeah, the cinema's great. So have our listeners been talking to us in our socials, Conrad?
They have indeed, yes. Eddie Coulter contacted us on Georgy Kropatchov, one of the co-directors of V, the film we looked at in the last episode. Eddie said, "Great episode. Wow, Georgy worked on Hard to Be a God," which is a film from 2013. So he must have been 81 at the time that he deadlined for that movie. Wow. And Eddie said, "That's also a rather unusual film." So interesting. Could be worth checking out, that one.
Yeah.
We also heard from Melinda Mock, our guest from the Night of the Comet episode from Retroblasting. And she said, "I so enjoyed this episode, and now I have to find a copy of this movie. I love Russian/Soviet films, although, granted, the only ones I've seen are The Day the Earth Froze, Jack Frost, and Come and See. I need to expand my list. Also, your guest on this episode is charming."
Good old Lars.
Good old Lars, you're charming. There we go. And on Melinda's request to see more movies like this, Joe Lipsett pointed out that V is going to be part of Severin Films' big forthcoming sale. So if you did want to pick up V alongside various other interesting and perhaps obscure titles, then that might be your chance. Head on over to Severin and have a look at what they've got on offer.
Yes, please check it out.
Serge of Cold Crash Pictures.
Oh, hey, Serge.
Hey, Serge. He said, "I liked V. It hasn't got the most riveting script, but it's short enough and weird enough that I enjoyed trying to figure it out for 77 minutes. But the one thing I take issue with is the idea that it ever passed for horror. Swap out the vodka for weed and this is a stoner comedy."
Well, that's very accurate.
It could be, actually. Yeah. I mean, Lars was comparing it to the average Berliner's weekend. So.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I think they might be onto something. Yeah. Unsexy Librarian replied to say, "According to the adults in my life, that movie was a phenomenon. I assume the book is better because it's Gogol. Also, there are several remakes and they all suck. Modern Russian horror is exquisitely derivative and very dumb. So there we go.
Oh, okay.
Not recommended. Good to know. Thank you, unsexy librarian. And finally, Matthew Fisher got in touch to say that he very much enjoyed our episode on Byzantium, which he hasn't even seen. Also caught up on our episode on The Vanishing, which he found very good, and said...
Oh, wow, that's an old episode.
It is, yeah. But he really enjoyed it, and he said that he liked that we pointed out that the Hollywood ending wasn't entirely a bad thing because it was good to have a female character save the day. Yeah, and it's Nancy Travis, so that's never a bad thing. And finally, I was thinking more about the task of selecting a film, and I had a childhood film come to me today, Frog Dreaming, a 1986 Australian film watched as a VHS rental back in the day, starring Henry Thomas straight after shooting to fame in E.T. Anyway, I don't know if it would be a sort of thing that you'd be looking for. Cheers for the great work and content. So thanks for that, Matt. And it definitely is the kind of movie we're looking for. I'm intrigued.
I think I've heard about this movie, but I've never seen it. Wow.
No. So, yeah, we might slap that one on the wheel before we give it a spin. So thanks for getting in touch. And do email us and send us your messages via our socials. We do love hearing from you.
Yes, please do. And Conrad, today we're doing something a little bit different.
We are. We have a special guest.
And who is it?
Our special guest today is a writer, editor, and also king of our social media channels. Friend of the pod, it is Isaac Sutton. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hey! Welcome
Doing
back.
Great. Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you back again. How have you been?
I've been good, I've been watching a lot of movies. I watched Wes Craven's New Nightmare for the first time the other day. It was
Oh, wow.
really good. It's like, wow, Scream who? It was awesome.
Oh, it's so meta, right?
Yeah.
So meta.
Really meta. What a good movie.
I haven't seen it in a long time. Does it hold up?
Elements do.
Elements. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Probably a lot like the movie we're gonna talk about today.
Well, speaking of which, I suppose you could hop on over to the oubliette and fetch it for us as one of the few special guests we have that we allow to do that.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, let me just open this weird little hatch thing. Oh wow, this is a big looking tunnel.
Yeah, you have to climb some ladders for some reason.
Okay. I'll get up on here. I just got shot by a laser.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry about that. We've had some extra security installed.
There are now 10 seconds.
And hurry
to
up, Isaac. There's not
self-destruct.
much time.
Okay, I'm going.
Feeling better, aren't you, Mr. Jackson?
All right, I'm back. I got it.
Wow.
That was an adventure, huh?
Yeah, we've been having a vermin problem, so we just thought we'd install some extra gadgets to try and sort that out.
That was for rats?
Yeah. So what do you have for us?
Well, today I pulled out a movie called The Andromeda Strain.
The 1971 adaptation of a Michael Crichton bestseller, no less, directed by Robert Wise, the director of The Sound of Music and Star Trek The Motion Picture. Starring Arthur Hill, James Olsen, Kate Reed, and David Wayne, and yet it's not a cast that I kind of recognize, except Dan and I, we've seen James Olsen before. He was the preacher in Amityville 2.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So how best to summarize the plot, Isaac?
Well, okay, let's do it. Let's do this thing. So the U.S. military is deployed to the rural town of Piedmont, Arizona, when their space virus-catching satellite crashes and ends up letting loose a microorganism that turns everyone's blood to sand. Initiating Protocol Wildfire, a team of government-funded scientists are taken to a secret lab above a nuclear bomb to study the 2 survivors, take samples of the entity, and play with fun little robot arms. It's melodramatic memory loss, magnificent microscopes, and monkey torture with the Andromeda Strain.
Oh my. Sounds like we're in for a treat.
Yes.
Let's take a break and discuss. And we're back to talk about The Andromeda Strain, a topical virus-themed movie, techno thriller. kind of. Yeah, so Isaac, this one came off of our patron's choice, you being one of our patrons. So this is all your fault. Tell us why you chose this movie and your relationship with it. Had you seen it before?
I had. So when I was growing up, my mom kind of sparked a love of movies in me from a really young age. We used to watch Turner Classic all the time together. Oh, yeah. And the Andromeda Strain came on one night. It was like 9 o'clock or something. It was late for me, right, as a preteen. Mm-hmm. I ended up staying up and watching the whole thing on TV with my mom, who fell asleep at the very, very end, right at the most climactic point of the movie.
That sounds like my mom.
Yeah. So it's always kind of held a little special place in my heart, always been kind of a little nostalgia bomb back to that night. And just thinking about watching movies with my mom, she's a big sci-fi, Star Trek nut, stuff like that. So is it as good as I remembered it as a kid? I don't know about that one. But I'm excited to talk about it with y'all today.
Yes.
Yeah. I would like to start off as well by saying this is our second Robert Wise movie that we've covered on the podcast. After The Haunting, way back in episode 10 with our second guest that we ever had on, Sarah Daly.
Great episode.
Very different movie to The Haunting.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about Robert Wise, isn't it? Because he seemed to be, let's be honest, such an accomplished filmmaker. I mean, he started off as an editor editing Citizen Kane, for God's sake. This guy knows what he's doing. And he seemed to be able to turn his hand to all kinds of genres. So he did crime thrillers, he did dramas, he did musicals like West Side Story and The Sound of Music, and won a freaking Oscar for it. So
yeah, The Day the Earth Stood Still as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Classic sci-fi.
And The Haunting, which is widely regarded to be probably the best haunted house movie, and directed the first Star Trek movie, although that one, its reputation varies.
Sure.
I happen to like it. It's my favourite Star Trek movie, oddly enough.
Ah, okay.
And I think that might speak to how I feel about the Andromeda Strain too, because I think there is a similarity between the Star Trek movie he directed in '79 and the Andromeda Strain, in that both films are very, very long, and I think a word that you could use is ponderous.
A fantastic word.
Yes.
Truly. Yeah.
It's the sort of film where there's a lot of thinking and a lot of talking, not a great deal of action.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of close-ups of documents and computer screens and data.
Yes.
A lot of data.
Yes.
A lot of reading.
I would say it's easily the driest sci-fi movie I have ever watched. It is bone dry. Like, it is.
It's powdered blood dry.
It's powdered blood dry. Yeah, absolutely. But also, I think that's one of the movie's strength. It's its strength and weakness, right? Like, it's no wonder almost my entire family fell asleep watching this goddamn thing. Like, it's long. They take a lot of time to get from place to place to do a very simple thing that they're talking about doing. But the very slow pace of it kind of makes it like very methodical, and it's a mystery movie more than it is a sci-fi movie in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you think about stuff that's like a noir, where it's just like, what's that one where he breaks his freaking nose? It doesn't matter. We'll cut that part.
Oh, Chinatown.
Chinatown.
Yes.
Yeah, he's just walking around Los Angeles and he's broken nose, but the difference is with the Andromeda Strain, they walk around the same hallway.
Different colours.
Different colours.
Sometimes.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on which level they're on. Yeah. I actually quite like the aesthetic of it. I think
love
it
it.
looks great.
I think the aesthetic's great. Yeah.
The production design of this movie is the main reason I remember it so vividly. You know, it's all very 2001 inspired and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's gorgeous, I think, right? I really love the sense of like analog science. They like turn a knob and it zooms in on a microscopic image, right? And thinking about it, it's not like they were filming through microscopes at this time, right? That's all like handmade stuff that they are like computerizing to make it look digital, but it's all analog. I don't know, it was just crazy the amount of like effort that went into the look and feel of this movie to really base it in some kind of like weird reality. I really enjoy the production design.
Yeah, in terms of science, 71. This film was shot in 1970, though. Pretty impressive for the science aspect when you really consider the time it was made. It does seem very dinky now with all these kind of visualizations on a computer that can only do, green dots or red dots. But yeah, there's a scene where they're showing the different levels and it looks like how you just take for granted how a digital image of a environment looks with all the passageways and stuff, but I think they used a projector and like a piece of cardboard. That was it. Like it was.
Yeah.
They just had to figure it out.
Yeah, it's all handmade, frame by frame special effects sequences created by Douglas Trumbull, the genius behind all of the special effects in 2001. It's mind-blowing, meticulous stuff. Like I remember reading his description of how they came up with the microscopic imagery of the Andromeda Strain itself, and I think he's got a 1.5-inch perspex hexagon, and they're shooting a strobe light through it and taking one frame and then rotating it through so many degrees and then firing another strobe light and opening the shutter again and getting so he was getting multiple exposures of this thing so that he creates a 3D tetrahedron.
The patience.
Yeah.
And it sparks the imagination. See, that's the thing for me, the meticulousness, the sort of procedural thriller in terms of all the different things that they have to go through in terms of quarantine and sterilization and a process of elimination to try and figure out, like, even how big the virus is. They have to go through this step of killing rats
That scene.
in dozens.
Okay, let's talk about that scene. That scene is freaking nuts.
Yeah.
Okay? Basically, they're trying to figure out how big the virus is, right? This space virus that crashed in a rural town in Arizona, killed the whole population. They've got a sample of it, and they're trying to figure out how big it is. So they put in these filter sizes, and they kind of bring out a little air tube, and then they bring out like a little monkey, right? Like a full-on monkey. They attach him to the air tube, and then he literally dies in front of you, right? And it's this like really sobering moment because you've been watching these people go through gorgeous sets, but essentially walk for like 45 minutes at this point, just kind of walk and talk, and you don't really feel the gravity of their situation, I would say at least. There's a little bit of a sense of that when they're walking through the town full of dead people and all that stuff. But then you watch this monkey die, and the scene is so jarring and so disturbing that, like, the rest of the movie, the tension goes up by, like, 100,000 points.
Yeah. And the fact that it's just one shot. There's no cutaways or edit points or anything. You just see an animal die.
Yeah.
There's no special effects.
And a very human animal. He's, like, gasping.
Yeah.
It's devastating to watch.
Yeah.
It's really upsetting, and they do it more than once.
Yeah.
It has to be said, it was monitored by the American Humane Association, and although they did make these monkeys pass out by giving them a CO2-rich air environment, as soon as they blacked out, somebody rushes in and feeds them a massive dose of oxygen, and they wake up immediately.
Sure.
It's still incredibly disturbing, and I can't imagine anybody would allow this to be shot
it's
now.
still an animal suffocating until it passes out.
It's not good, is it? It's not good at all.
That can't be enjoyable for any animal.
Absolutely not. animal torture aside, like there's so much of this movie that is so like this could never exist in 2020 from this cast of completely unknown people, basically, right? You watch these people, none of them are stars at all, and they all look just like normal human scientists, right? It like super sells the believability of this movie, and this has like a crazy budget, right? It's an effects film. Just trying to imagine selling a movie with no big name actors that's all effects based in 2020. I'm a big fan of the time capsule nature, I guess, of the Andromeda Strain, even though a lot of it has not aged well, including monkey torture. You know.
I mean, for $6.5 million in 1971, holy crap, that's a big budget film. I did feel like some of it felt low budget. Like at the start when they're broadcasting the first investigators of the town, and you just hear the whole situation. It's like, I can't breathe or something. It's just like, what? Why aren't we seeing this? Why is this a radio broadcast? Or similarly with the fighter jet pilot, his helmet starts dissolving, and you see that for a few seconds, and then you just hear him crash over the broadcast. Like, why aren't we seeing this?
It is the most dull plane crash ever caught on film because it's just not caught on film at all.
Just hear it.
I think at least with the opening, with the people driving into the town and then dying, to just hear it is almost more disturbing.
Acceptable.
It sort of has that documentary realism of, oh, holy shit, this feels real because there's no cameras there. We can only just hear it like the people in the control room.
And it builds the reveal of the town where you walk through and there's just a bunch of dead bodies in the street.
That's true.
But the plane crash is inexcusable.
It is.
And I think like the acting in that opening sequence really isn't up to snuff comparatively. It's like soap opera to the max.
Yes, I would also like to say that this is one of the few movies where I had previously read the book and hadn't seen the movie before. So this is a first for the podcast, I think. I remember really enjoying the book. I think I read it in my late teens, early 20s. I thought it was a really riveting story, and I really appreciated the science and the characters. I don't know whether the film kind of represents the book. I mean, it's supposed to be a really faithful adaptation, and I do feel that, but almost too faithful. I don't know. There's not much cinema in this movie. It's very procedural. The score is just like they just got a printer and
You don't like the
score? and like a beepy boopy machine, and it's I don't know.
Dan doesn't like the score.
It's so bleak and like you just can't attach to it.
Conrad, do you like the score?
Yeah, I kind of like
Yes.
I'm not generally a fan of Gil Mellé. He's a jazz artist primarily.
Right.
And he went through a period where he was experimenting with early electronic music in the sense that he was building circuits to make noises. That he isn't buying a soft synth here and knocking out a few loops and drones. He's building circuits and making all these weird rhythmic sounds. I don't know, it kind of gives the movie an atmosphere entirely of its own, and it matches the rest of the tone of the movie and the hardware of the movie. It's very cold, it's very procedural, and it's very strange, and there are moments in it where it kind of feels like it is the Andromeda Strain. It's kind of the voice of the Andromeda Strain.
I completely disagree with that. Like, I think it's too cold. It's too cold. Like, there's no emotion in the music at all, and it's almost transitional in most respects. Like, it doesn't add any mood to it, apart from when they first witness the Andromeda Strain on the microscope. That bit amazing with the score. It makes it terrifying.
What about the tube sequence at the end where he's getting shot by lasers?
Come on.
No, none of that?
The cheesiest sequence in the world. And like the lasers, I'm so used to cinematic lasers where they go pew and you see the ray and it's like, wow, that's cool. But with this, it's like real lasers. We don't see the laser because, you know, lasers go at the speed of light. So why would you see it? And you just see the aftermath of the laser. But It's not very interesting to watch, though, is it?
Oh man, you're breaking my heart. Oh, what?
I mean, I still don't understand why they have motion sensing lasers to destroy lab animals.
Yeah.
That's complete overkill.
The existence of the lasers, I agree, is bizarre.
Yeah.
Shouldn't happen. But the laser sequence I love that sequence. No,
What?
I can't believe that you don't.
How? Like the sequence, essentially, he climbs a ladder to the 4th floor and then he climbs back down to the 3rd floor and he opens a door.
Right. But my thing is, when you say, oh, hey, we have a nuclear bomb underneath this lab, you're going to have to pay that off, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have to blow that
of
up.
course.
It's Chekhov's nuclear bomb.
Yes.
Yeah.
So by the time, and like they have this whole long explanation sequence of like, hey, here's the key to disarm the nuclear bomb and only you get to have it because you're a single man? ? That was weird.
Yeah.
But moving past that, right, they give him this key and it's like, I want to see that happen, right? So when they finally get to the tunnel part and it is like clinical and stuff still, just like the rest of the movie, I was so into that because normally you hit that action sequence and it's so bombastic and it's so dramatic, but this was like the most understated disabling the bomb sequence I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it totally works for me. Plus I like the score though, right? I like that droning, sinister, industrial noise score, which is weird for the time, but also weird for our time.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I didn't understand the bit where he encounters that woman as well and she just runs away. I mean, like, it just...
That was bad.
To me, it drained the tension and suspense. Like, who was this woman? Like, what is going on here?
Well, she works there.
I guess so.
And she's terrified of him because she thinks that he's infected with Andromeda.
Right.
It's the same as when Levitt has her epileptic fit.
Yeah.
Nobody will help her because they think that she's been infected.
Does epilepsy cause major memory loss like that? I feel like there's no way, right?
Well, I don't know. On the commentary, they talk about how certain types of epilepsy cause people to just zone out and then they snap back and they've lost 15 minutes.
Really?
I mean, I've had that in meetings, so I can relate. Especially on Zoom free here.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I guess we just take their word for it. I mean, it's one of those movie conveniences, isn't it? Amnesia. And I don't think amnesia or multiple personality are quite as common as movies would like us to believe. And, but it's fun to toy with them for narrative purposes. And again, it's Chekhov's epilepsy, isn't it? It's introduced right at the beginning that this character has a problem with flashing lights, and then it becomes critical that she misses something vitally important. And all of this ties into what Michael Crichton's main themes are that people find so compelling, is that he likes looking at how humans design what they think is a perfect system and it goes horribly, horribly wrong. And that's kind of been his theme throughout at least his techno thrillers, maybe not his historical fiction, but certainly Westworld, which he wrote and directed as a film and has now been rejuvenated as a hit series. And of course, Jurassic Park, directed by Steven Spielberg.
A classic.
Both theme parks that are supposed to be perfect and nothing could ever go wrong. And of course, it immediately goes tits up and people die. This one, again, is they've designed this perfect system. And I think one of the things that is a shame in this movie is that at the end, because it all escalates so quickly, you have like the virus has got out, it's mutated, the nuclear bomb's counting down, Levitt's having an epileptic fit. It escalates big time, and it kind of means that you miss some of the major events in there, like the fact that Andromeda mutates into a version that's benign. I think you'd be lucky to catch that first time you watch the movie.
Yeah.
Pacing is nuts in this movie.
The mutation to becoming benign was a huge part in the book. I remember it being like, oh, that's a bit of a anticlimax. Like, there was such a mystery involved in how to contain it and how to deal with it. And then suddenly, oh, it's harmless now. The end.
Yeah.
And that was the book to me. But with this, I don't remember the lasers or the bomb in the book, but it must have been in there. But I just, for some reason, I don't remember it.
Maybe it wasn't in there.
I'll have to check.
That would be interesting.
Talking about Michael Crichton, So I read and heard in the commentary that this was his first movie adaptation. Is that wrong, Conrad?
No, I think that's right. I think I got confused when I was researching this because one of the books that he wrote under a pseudonym was turned into a TV movie of the week that Crichton directed himself. And I thought his pseudonym books came first, but actually he was still writing under a pseudonym after the Andromeda Strain, which was the first book that was published under his real name and was a huge hit. And that gave him the opportunity to adapt one of his other works into a TV movie. And then later on, direct his feature debut, Westworld, which was an original script.
I was a huge fan of Michael Crichton growing up. I've read quite a few of his books, but I didn't realize how many of his books were made into movies. So there's Jurassic Park, of course, and then in Sphere, Congo, 13th Warrior, Disclosure, I didn't realize was Michael Crichton, Timeline, The Terminal Man, Rising Sun. It's a lot of movies. And he's also written a lot of screenplays, Runaway, Looker, Coma, which is a film that I've seen that's pretty good. I think the concept is really good, but the execution maybe not. As you've mentioned, Westworld, and he also directed The Great Train Robbery. I didn't know that. He directed that.
Yeah, it's based on a novel of his too. So he would do historical things like The Great Train Robbery and The 13th Warrior. So yeah, historical fiction and techno thrillers. But yet he has a dark side as well. So Disclosure, I remember, was kind of criticized at the time because as an expose of sexual harassment in the workplace, but it's a guy being sexually harassed by a woman, kind of got women a little bit upset because it's like, yeah, that's not really the issue, or at least not very often. And he was also, towards the end of his life, quite an ardent climate change denier and spoke on it publicly and to the Senate.
Right.
So a complicated figure, shall we say, in retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think his medical background, because I did hear he got an MD at Harvard. I think it makes his writing much more plausible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Jurassic Park is so good, because it's like, wow, that is possible. That could possibly happen.
Yeah, and also Coma, which he directed, that's based on a novel by Robin Cook. So he didn't write that one, but he wrote the screenplay. And
Right. Yes.
the first half of the movie really focuses on giving audiences a good insight into the procedural, matter-of-fact, business-like nature of being a doctor. And I don't think audiences had ever seen that before. And also Michael Crichton created ER, the TV series.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
I'm learning so many things about Michael Crichton.
yeah, he was really quite an accomplished guy, just breaking new ground in all kinds of areas, including computer games at one point in the 8-bit era.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's a pretty amazing guy, yeah, so it's kind of disappointing to find out that he was,
A climate change denier?
yeah, sort of denying basic science towards the end of his life, which is a little bit disappointing.
Kind of
but-
matches his themes of human incompetence.
Yeah, quite.
You know?
Yeah, but yeah, it does lend a sort of credibility to his work. And also this idea of what he called a false document, whereby a lot of his novels are just filled with printouts and faxes and statistics and tables of data. And I think Robert Wise and Douglas Trumbull recreated that in this movie. So even from the opening titles, you're seeing documents and close-ups of key fobs with words on and close-ups of buttons with things written over the top so that you can read them.
Yeah.
And often items that weren't that interesting or that important as well, but you really got to read everything.
Yeah. Well, it's 1971, I guess. You've got to think about how savvy audiences were at the time. I think this was quite groundbreaking in a way. It was a hit.
Sure,
I mean, I feel
sure.
like this one just barely makes it into the oubliette in general when I suggested it, right? It was a big hit, the big names attached to it, all this stuff. But nobody I've ever talked to has seen it, talks about it. You know, it's not very important to them or anything like that. But I think that the sneaky thing about the Andromeda Strain, at least for me, is that lingering atmosphere of the scientists, of this process, right? It is so sciencey. It feels like you're watching these people do their daily job,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that's so effective for me. And it builds that tension at the very end for me because of all of that legwork they're doing up at the top. There's this one scene, it's during the cleaning process. The decontamination sequence is like just bonkers in general.
It's like they walked into a Willy Wonka science lab. Like every
exactly
room
what
is
it is.
different. Just like,
Yeah.
don't eat the blueberry.
Exactly what it's like. That's such a good pull. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so they're in like the body cavity search room of the Willy Wonka factory. And they try to get the computer to recognize their voice, right? And the computer won't listen to them, just like when you use Siri, you're like, hey Siri, hey Siri.
That's relatable,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, but they do that in this movie, made in 1971, right? And it just emphasizes the human aspect of everything that they're doing in this moment, right? And how like completely powerless all these people are, but also how technical they are, how advanced they are, how I don't know, I really enjoy like the themes of this movie and how they play out, even though it's so slow and so like some points just seem like total melodramatic cheesy nonsense. You know, I still think that the parts that work almost definitely come from Crichton, and they work hard and well in their adaptation.
Yeah, I think this movie does go against cliches and what you would expect with certain scenes in a movie like this. Like when we're being introduced to the characters as an audience, like normally, you know, in a Ocean's 11 type film, you would have like cool music and they would be doing something really extraordinary.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, this is this character. And we go to the next character, oh, they're doing this. And then they assemble a team and they get together. It's like, oh, yeah, this is...
Nobody's playing blackjack with Brad Pitt in this one.
Yeah. You know, it's got slow mo. There's some sort of like 60s, like, I don't know, Motown track
Honey,
playing
put on
over
my
it.
tie. Like that's how they find these people. Yeah, call
but they
someone
don't
else.
in this movie. Not in this movie. It's no music, just like one character after the other. Everyone looks the same apart from one woman, and she doesn't want a bar of it. And similarly with a lot of like the procedural scenes, you know, in like CSI, you would have like some funky like electronic music playing, and it would be a montage of like slides, and it would be cool. And I love the scene in A Hot Fuzz where they're doing procedural paperwork, and it's like cool music over it. It's like that's what they would normally do, but they don't. With this, we just see it in real time.
In this one, they're just like,
them talking
hey, that
about
monkey died.
everything.
Yeah, let's get another monkey out there, kill another monkey. Oh, there's a green fleck of paint.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah.
Just zoom in again.
Zoom in more.
Yeah, keep zooming. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's the big reveal.
No, there is drama in that scene though, because Ruth wants to use two cameras at once, and that's almost like a full-on argument over that.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a petty argument.
I know, but I love that, you see.
I do too.
I just eat it up.
Now it's time for Random Trivia.
So, Dan, what fascinating piece of trivia did you discover after testing it on multiple monkeys today?
So many dead monkeys. So the trivia I have today is about the effects footage and props for Andromeda Strain. I hope this is true, but I did read it on IMDb. So the effects footage and props from Andromeda Strain went on to be used in a number of TV shows in the 70s and 80s. The $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, Knight Rider, Airwolf, and Buck Rogers in the 25th century. So Andromeda Strain, the movie that keeps on giving.
Never throw anything away when you can reuse it on a TV show.
Exactly. Especially in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's our trivia. So let's talk about the characters for a bit. I think our protagonist is meant to be Dr. Hall.
He's not.
Yeah, well, he's the youngest, and he's the one that defuses the bomb at the end. But I don't think as a character he ages particularly well. I mean, certainly the way that he treats women, I can understand why he's single if he treats women this way.
Yeah.
I mean, the way he treats his nurse, Karen Anson, he doesn't even introduce himself to her and then refers to her as Miss Medcom. mocking her as though she's just a computer technician and dismisses her ideas and ignores her. And then he's chatting up the female computer voice because he says that it's luscious.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
He's a pervert.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't find him all that compelling. I mean, I know he's supposed to be so dedicated to his patients that he's ignoring all the niceties, and that's supposed to be admirable, I guess, but not all that keen on him. I think, without doubt, the star of the show has to be Ruth Levitt.
Yes.
Who's played by Kate Reid, not an actress that I'm particularly familiar with, but boy, does she make an impression in this movie.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah.
I love her. She's sarcastic. She's like everything that all the rest of the cast members aren't. She brings such an energy to every sequence.
Yeah, she kind of reminds me of the doctor from Outland as well. Just like no nonsense.
Yeah.
Don't bullshit me. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I just love that because she's a professional woman in what has traditionally been a very male sphere. At least that's the way it's presented on screen. And like Frances Sternhagen's character, originally her character was male in the book. It was the screenwriter Nelson Giddings' suggestion that they switch it to being female, which Robert Wise was originally resistant to because of Raquel Welch's involvement in Fantastic Voyage in 1966, where she was basically just there to look great in a diving costume, I think. So he was resistant to that, but Kate Reid is not Raquel Welch. She has no patience with the decontamination process. She mocks the men mercilessly, but she contributes just as much as the guys in solving this problem. Yeah. And it's just great to see her there.
Yes, agreed. I think it's one of the reasons why I was a little disappointed by her epilepsy causing almost all of the problems. I was like, don't do that to Kate Reid. She's the most interesting character here. She's the one who's, when they find out that the reason that the Andromeda Strain exists in the first place on Earth is because the US was trying to turn it into a bioweapon. What? No way. She's the one who's like upset about that, pushing back against that, right? She's like the hero in so many of these shots, but she's also like the downfall of like the whole structure because of her epilepsy.
Yeah.
I wanted her to be the hero who kicks everybody else's butt.
Yeah.
I found the female characters actually the most compelling part of this movie. Even the black assistant, Karen?
Yeah,
Karen Anson.
We finally do find out her name, even though Hall isn't interested in it.
Yeah, played by Paula Kelly. She's great as well. She like puts up with a lot of groping from the other guy that's just poor.
Yeah.
Did y'all get that he was supposed to be drunk? I didn't process that until the very end of the movie.
Oh, yeah, the Sterno drinker, yeah. Yeah, I did get that. He was the town drunk, and that's the reason that he was still alive.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of message that's sending.
I had to look up what Sterno was.
Yeah.
I had no idea. It's not it's supposed to be consumed.
No.
It's a can of ethanol and methanol. It's also been dubbed canned heat.
Oh, wow.
They used to light it for heat, but during Prohibition, apparently it was quite popular with homeless people. They would strain it through like a sock.
Oh.
That's why he calls it squeeze,
Yes.
because he would squeeze it through like a sock or a cloth.
Oh, wow.
To filter it out and then mix it with fruit juice. It used to be called jungle juice.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, wow. That's something I was not aware of
Yeah.
down here in Australia.
No.
That was something. I'm in America, dude. We don't use squeeze. What the heck is that?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
No, the female characters were definitely the most compelling people in the movie. The guy that's in charge, Dr. Stone, I mean, his surname is very apt. He's the most boring, just charisma vacuum that's ever existed. He's so much of the 50s. This is a 70s movie, but clearly, he's one of those guys that got to his 20s, decided on a hairstyle and a way of dressing and behaving and just stuck with it.
Right.
And so now it's the 70s and he still looks like 50s guy.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Mystery Science Theater when they had this short from the 50s where it showed all of these guys in suits with these 50s haircuts descending the steps from a Pan Am flight and sort of like walking briskly away. And I think Mike Nelson said on the voice track, "Hi, I'm Bob Business. Which way is business?" That's Dr. Stone all over. He's just 50s scientist guy.
Yeah. ties way too tight on that dude.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I found most of the characters really boring. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there wasn't any motivations. There wasn't any backstories. It was just a bunch of normal.
I don't know about that.
scientists.
You did, as they're descending the levels, you do get a little bit of insight into each of them. You have these sort of flashbacks. They're a little bit awkward, actually. They're sort of these split
The
screen.
flashbacks are strange. Like, it's like a dream sequence.
yes.
Or-
Yeah.
Yes.
I had no idea what I was watching.
She's thinking back to a meeting she had with a vague German scientist who was like, space viruses will kill us all. And then they do like this close up to her in a spotlight, just nodding to herself, like in meditation. It's really bizarre.
It's very strange.
Very strange.
But it's the one time you do get some insight into Dr. Stone, though, because he has all of these flashes of the dead people he saw in the town. And then you see an image of his wife dead in her 70s party clothes.
Oh, is that what that was?
Yeah.
I thought it was just another person from the town.
No, it's not. It's him imagining his wife dead. So you do get a little insight into their emotional selves, but yeah, not a lot.
yeah, and it's pretty awkward.
I didn't get that. I think I was too distracted by the presentation of that.
Yeah.
So there has been another adaptation of Andromeda Strain, the 2008 TV miniseries,
Yeah.
which I saw the trailer for, and I immediately just said,
Nope.
"That's a nope."
It's a nope.
Yeah.
It looks awful. And it's like between 2000 and 2010 in terms of sci-fi and effects heavy TV shows just does not date well. Like the CGI in that decade was bad. But it's got some interesting people. It's got Will from Will and Grace, and it's got Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine in it. It's like, what?
Yeah. I don't know what it was with the noughties. They loved adapting things and remaking things, and they were really shit at it. It's like they did a remake of Salem's Lot in the noughties, and I really wish they hadn't. Fortunately, the thirst to remake things yet again means that it will come up again, and I would not be surprised if somebody's already eyeing the Andromeda Strain.
I would not be surprised, especially after COVID as well. It just seems very relevant. And the concept is still mind-blowing for me, the whole crystalline structure of the microbe and the underground base as well. The lab was like something I'd never really seen before.
Yeah.
Secret space virus is just a good thing. It's a good idea.
Yeah. And something as procedural as this, post the Chernobyl TV series, I think could go down really well.
Yeah. I do have to say, though, for a movie about a killer microbe, apart from the start with the town, there's not a lot of death in this movie.
No.
What a more death.
Plenty of monkey death.
A lot of, but get the...
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. But I don't know. I felt like there was a missed opportunity to really inject some more energy and tension in the film, having, I don't know, some more death.
But then you'd miss the really interesting microscope debate.
Mm.
I want to see that microscope debate. Okay, Dan?
2 cameras or 1?
2 cameras or 1? That was that. I'll take that. Okay?
Coming to you live from the Movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Hey, it's the Mobley Awards. It's where we present our favorite self-destructing parts of the film in a number of laser-melting categories.
I love the movies.
Best quote.
I think it's probably fair to say that Ruth Levitt has most of the best lines in this movie because she has so many great put-downs. And I think it's when she's introduced to Hall that I really enjoyed it. They said, do you know each other? And Hall says, by reputation only. And Ruth comes back with, ah, yes, up until now we've had to worship from afar. She clearly has no respect for this man. And then she just wants him to know it before they start working together. It's great.
My favorite quote, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's the technician that they meet in I think it's the red room. And they're asking, have we had any calls, any messages? And he just says, I have one thing to do, just one. Everything else is fully automatic, computerized, and self-regulated. I listen for a little bell just here. Ding-a-ling. And I just thought, what? How did this guy get this job? Did he went through like university, he got an engineering degree just to sit in a room and listen for a bell?
And then be a real turd about it too. And then he can't even find the paper stuck in the machine. I mean, this guy should have been fired for sure.
I know. You've got one job, man. Yeah. One job.
And he failed. Did you have a quote?
I do have a quote. So this one's a lot more dramatic, right? I think I just like the emotion of the moment. One of the doctors, Charles Dutton, he gets locked in with part of the Andromeda Strain, and he thinks it's still contagious, that he's going to die from it. And in the meantime, his buddies are all trying to decide, like, how do they handle this situation. And he goes, experiment with your own lives, damn it! Right? He's like freaking out. It's a great moment. I'm a big fan of that one. And it's a little funny, but it's also like pretty sobering. And yeah, it's good. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Best hair or costume?
I love the Daft Punk helmet from the decontamination sequence.
Oh, yes.
It's so
That's
good.
That's what I put down too.
Yeah.
The Xenon room where they get to put on a bedazzled sequined
Kanye
like
West moment.
It's like while standing butt naked in like a shiny room while
it's
they
awesome.
get their skin burned off. Yeah, that scene.
Yeah. Well, my favorite was the costume that they have to wear when they're working on their patients, because it's like this weird combination of a naive 50s vision of an astronaut spacesuit attached to curtains on a rail.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
I think it's a
really
great image,
bubbly.
though.
Yeah.
It looks great, except just not very practical when you want to get out.
Not
Because
at
you've got to
all.
back up.
No.
Most 70s moment.
I'm going to go with Serge's 70s moment when we did Capricorn 1. But I guess it's not exactly a government conspiracy, but it's a top secret government, experiment, I guess, that's going on in a secret lab underground. So the 70s was all about that.
It was, yeah. It's not quite post-Watergate, is it, 1971, but it's sort of the Vietnam era where distrust in the government is starting to bubble up in terms of their motives and their treatment of citizens. So, yeah, you're very right. I mean, I had something sort of along the same lines, but, so one element of it is, but I wrote down unnecessary boobs.
Yes.
Because
Oh my gosh, they show that dead girl's boobs.
Yeah.
they do. It's a completely unnecessary shot of a dead woman with her breasts on display. And of course she has a hippie peace symbol necklace too. So that the reactionary conservatives can look at it and say, look at that stupid dead hippie. But they can also enjoy her boobs at the same time. So it's kind of a twofer.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Mine was like the vague socialite party sequence that they recruit Dr. Shutstone from. It's like every single second of that sequence screams 1970. Like the styling, the dialogue, like there's like nothing about it that's anywhere close to modern or even 1980. Like it is stuck in that time period.
Yeah.
Favorite scene?
My favorite scene by far is the exploration of the town of Piedmont. Just because it is, I'm a sucker for exploring derelict spacecraft or deserted ships or deserted towns where you don't know what's happened and there's bodies everywhere and you've got to try and figure it out. I don't know, I just always love that in movies. Whenever they have that sequence, I'm always really happy.
Yeah, that sequence was very eerie, and because you had no idea what was going on, seeing all the bodies, and the use of the split screen was actually very effective in that scene as well. I did laugh though at the close-ups of the bodies because you could clearly see they were still alive because their eyes were moving. You could see their stomach going up and down as they were breathing. For the most part, very, very effective scene.
Yeah. There's even a slight moment of comedy when Hall tips the town doctor onto the floor and pulls his pants down.
Oh, yeah.
And says to Dr. Stone, "Look at his butt." Dr. Stone says that isn't funny.
How about you, Isaac?
I think my favorite scene's the monkey murder, unfortunately. Like, it's such a break from the rest of what the movie is. I mean, it was the moment as a kid and now that made me like kind of snap back into it.
Right, yes.
Most cliche sci-fi moment.
So I'll go first with the last sequence with the self-destruct sequence, counting down, lasers, a key that only one person has, mere seconds to go before he saves the day. I mean, it's a classic with pretty much every action thriller Bond movie ever made.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. And I noted down just one aspect of that, which is the female computer voice counting down, because it's always a female computer voice.
That's true.
And she's always preternaturally calm about it. It's always T-5 minutes. It's never, "Holy shit, run!" It's always this soothing motherly voice telling you have 3 minutes to live.
Yeah.
It's just really weird. But we would get that in every movie after that, from Alien onwards. So maybe this was the first, I don't know.
Best special effect.
I think mine's the microscope shots.
Yeah, it's mine too. I mean, it's Douglas Trumbull, the man's a genius, and he worked hard with all these analog technologies creating these things, so you have to give him credit for them, and they're pretty amazing to look at just from a visual storytelling point of view, and also just fascinating as well in terms of how he did them. So I would go for those.
Yeah, similarly with me, I would choose the robot arms. They just looked like they were actually, responding to the scientists. Like, I don't know whether they were. Was it just puppetry? Was there just a guy pulling strings with the arms out of shot? I'm not sure, but it was convincing to me.
Yeah, it could be real, because I know that one of the biggest things in the budget was that they spent a lot of money hiring real scientific equipment, some of it very experimental, to litter the film with. So
Right.
Favorite sound effect.
my favorite sound was one that kind of took me out of the movie for a little while. It's like really close to the end of the film where they're looking at Andromeda through an electron microscope.
Yeah, I wrote that too.
And they turn this pump on and it's this lovely little
Yeah.
The vacuum tube. Yeah.
It's weird. It's like a popping noise, but it sounds like it's gurgling liquid at the same time. Yeah. It's like someone just took the stopper out of the sink or something. Yeah.
It's Willy Wonka again, isn't it? Willy Wonka's virus lab.
Yeah. Teleportation room. Yeah.
I would say similarly, an effect that was like, oh yeah, this is a movie, was whenever they throw their clothes in the furnace, it always goes up whoosh, it's like they've thrown kerosene on, yeah.
Wow, these guys are alcoholics.
Most funniest moment.
I think my favorite quote of the movie is when they're talking about, so basically the president of the United States, he has delayed the launch of a nuclear bomb strike on the random Arizona town.
Yeah.
And the whole time the scientists are pushing for him to blow this freaking place up because it's a virus that's going to kill everybody, and then they find out that nuclear radiation makes the virus grow, so they have to call the president up and say, hey, we were wrong, actually, sorry. And when they do, the president's underling says, the boss will be pleased to know that he made the right decision on the 712 in the first place. And Dr. Ruth says, congratulate him on his scientific insight. And I love that scene. It's so close. It's so good. So good.
So much sass, even to the president.
I know.
Oh, yeah. She has absolutely no shame.
Yeah.
It's great.
The funniest part for me was when Mark Hall is flirting with the announcement voice when she's waking him up, and then the answering service supervisor gets on the line, and he asks him, you should behave yourself, like we're in a professional environment. And then he says that the voice actually belongs to Gladys Stevens, who is 63 years old. She lives in Omaha and makes her living taping messages for voice reminder systems. And it's just like, oh, he definitely was barking up the wrong tree there.
For me, it was the scene where the politicians were arguing as well, but for a different reason. And that's because whenever they're talking to the senators, they seem to have their own dedicated camera because they pop up on different TV screens. And at one point, they're turning to each other on the TV screens as though they can spatially tell that their TV screen is on the left or on the right. And it just so much looks like it's going to turn into a Zucker Brothers movie sketch, something from Top Secret or Airplane. And they're going to start fighting on the TV screens or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just made me giggle. I thought it was silly. And that's our Mooblies.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Matt Conley, and you are listening to Movie Oubliette.
Okay, it's final verdict time. Should Andromeda Strain be released to infect the whole world with its cinematic crystalline supremacy adored by all? Or should it be buried in the underground lab of the US Department of Agriculture, aka the Oubliette, never to be released to the public again, lost forever? Isaac, I noticed as well, this After Sunshine, they're both kind of technological, sciencey films.
Yeah.
Does Andromeda Strain hold up?
I like it. I'm a fan. I wouldn't begrudge anyone from putting it back in. I think my hot take on Andromeda Strain is that it's a very personal movie to me. It's a very specific and kind of peculiar movie. It's a movie that if you love sci-fi, right, and you love mystery stuff like that, I'd say give it a shot for sure. And I think that on that basis, I'd let it out of the oubliette. But also, if it's, if you want that to languish under the laser guns, you feel free.
Well, I think I'll go first because I have a feeling I know what Conrad thinks about this movie. But this movie, for me, I appreciate the science. I appreciate the procedural aspect of it. I think it has been very influential in paving the way for procedural like crime thrillers. I feel would have been influenced by this movie. I appreciate this adaptation being faithful to the book and it being quite non-Hollywood in its presentation of characters and science. But boy, was I bored watching this movie. I thought this was the dullest movie I have seen in a long time. The score just drained all life from the film. And the characters just so boring. And the last sequence, just a big cliche. And I was happy when the credits started rolling. So, yeah, I don't know. For some reason, it just didn't hit with me.
Spiked that one in the oubliette. That was a volleyball serve.
Conrad.
Well, I think, yes, you probably guessed. So this does appeal to me. I can't explain exactly why. There's just something about the dry, methodical, very thoughtful, plodding nature of it that really appeals to me. I don't know what it is. I'm the kind of person that likes writing long lists and lining things up on shelves and watching a bunch of scientists who look like they could be scientists in an extremely unsexy way, in extremely unflattering, unsexy clothes, slowly working out what this virus is in the most methodical way you can imagine, with Douglas Trumbull's visualizations on the screen and this weird otherworldly soundtrack from Gil Millet underneath. Just pressed all my buttons, and even though it's 2 hours and 15 minutes long, I think it just flies by for me. I'm just, yeah, show me another graph, go on.
Yes.
I don't know. I find it bizarrely intoxicating in the same way that I found the Chernobyl series intoxicating. And I think if you like that kind of stuff and you like Robert Wise's Star Trek movie, then you're going to lap this up. If that kind of thing is death to you and you'd much rather have more dead monkeys and lasers, then maybe you want to watch the A&E version of it from 2008 or something
Just
else.
something else. Maybe go watch Close Encounters. Same special effects guy.
Yeah, a bit more going on. But I still think it's an impressive and interesting and fascinating piece of work, and I would check it out. I would say to people, check it out. So I'm with Isaac. I'm gonna let this one go.
Yes. So outnumbered.
So turn off those lasers and let that monkey fly.
Yeah.
Experiment with your own lives, damn it. I'm out of here.
Happy ending for the monkey.
That's all we really wanted.
So Isaac, it's been amazing having you on the show again. Thank you so much for suggesting this movie and for coming along and sharing your wit and wisdom about it. Where can people follow you and find out more about what you think about movies?
Of course. You can go ahead and follow me at Isaac Lastname on Twitter and Instagram. I also have a website, www.isaac.lastname.com. I post very, very, very occasional film reviews and blog posts on that. But yeah, thank y'all so much for having me on. It's always such a massive joy whenever I'm in a room with y'all. So, or on a Skype, whatever we're on, in a Zoom room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
It's a bit freaky, though, that every time you put a movie into the patrons pick and we spin the wheel, it comes up.
Yeah, what is going on with that? I feel like
it looks like a fix.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not trying to steal from you guys. I feel like I'm gonna stop posting in there. Just give other people a chance.
Oh, we're going to spin the wheel again really soon because there's some great movies on there and we're really keen to do some more of them. So we're going to leave everything that people have suggested so far and give it another spin.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And listeners, if you want to keep up to date with Movie Oubliette, you can find us on all platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as Movie Oubliette.
And if you'd like to email us, we're at movie.oubliette@gmail.com. We love your letters.
Yes, we do. And please rate and review us if you haven't already on Apple Podcasts or whatever other podcast platform you are listening to us on.
Yeah, and if you want to support the show, then head on over to Patreon, where for as little as $1 you can nominate and vote on films to appear in future episodes and get access to expanded parts of the show. And if you give us $5, then you get access to minisodes, monthly extra episodes where we talk about recent movies, which is great fun.
Yes, we have one coming up about the movie Saint Maud.
Yeah.
So look out for that.
Yeah, landed on Amazon Prime this month. So yeah, check that out.
Okay, Conrad, what are we doing next episode?
Well, we're doing something a bit different because of Iconicon. So we will be appearing as special guests on the Dreamland podcast. That's Retro Blasting's podcast, talking about The Abyss, the James Cameron 1989 sci-fi underwater movie.
Yes.
And the hosts of Dreamland, so Melinda and Aaron, will be joining us on our next episode to talk about Leviathan.
Oh, another watery film.
Yes, but we get the oubliette version, so it's the one that nobody remembers.
Uh-huh.
Directed by George P. Cosmatos, who I believe directed some of the Rambo movies, starring Peter Weller of RoboCop, Richard Crenna, Amanda Pays, Daniel Stern, Ernie Hudson, and Hector Elizondo, with a score by Jerry Goldsmith and special effects by Stan Winston. I mean, it's got to be great, surely.
Wow. It has to be. Surely it's better than James Cameron's movie.
It must be. It must be. So, yes, join us on Dreamland for the Abyss and on our own podcast for Leviathan. It's going to be lots of wet and wild fun, I'm sure.
Thanks again, Isaac, for joining us and going on a journey through science again. With
Science
another
journeys.
techie film. Yes.
Hooray!
All right, listeners, tune in next time.
Bye.
Bye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
I'll have the answer when I know why a 69-year-old sterno drinker with an ulcer is like a normal 6-month-old baby.